Aiden, what are you doing? What on earth happened here? I found my grandson looking cold, wrapped in a blanket and cowering in the corner of the garage, and I rushed over to him in a panic. Grandma, it's okay. It happens all the time. Don't worry about it. That's right. It's his punishment for always causing trouble. What? I reacted with a frown to the statement made by my daughter-in-law, who had quietly stood behind me. After that, being trapped in the garage, I encouraged my grandson and decided to take action. Let's escape, Aiden. Huh? I will protect you no matter what. I'll rescue you from here, so just wait. I said this and took my mobile phone out of my pocket and called someone. My name is Mary. I've reached the age of 70 and run a candy store with my sister, Dorothy. After my husband passed away and I was left alone, I seemed to be standing on the brink of despair for a while. My sister, who couldn't bear to see me like that, invited me to join her. This shop belongs to my sister and her late husband, and I'm here to help, so to speak. My sister's husband died quite some time ago as well. This shop, a memento of her husband, is something she's determined to protect, and I want to support her in that. So I decided to work as a helper. Mary, what are we going to do for the New Year's celebration? My sister has always doted on me. She acted as a parent in place of our busy parent. To me, my sister was indeed like a mother. I guess we'll probably go to Oliver's place again this year, huh? I've promised to show up, and I've told Aiden as well. Oliver is my son. He has a child with his wife, Emma, and that's my grandson, Aiden. By the way, how old is Aiden now? I think he's 20 years old. Is he still staying at home all the time? At my sister's words, I let my expression darken. My grandson Aiden apparently started shutting himself at home after attending college for a while. It seems he was bullied, and he even dropped out of college this year. Currently, he's unemployed and doesn't step out of the house at all. It seems so. Really? Aiden used to be such a social and cheerful child. My sister is right. Up until high school, my grandson was lively and had a life that had nothing to do with shutting himself at home. But then, one day, he suddenly became reclusive, and I was unable to hide my surprise when I heard about it. Then you should take this to him. As I recalled the situation and looked gloomy, my sister handed me some sweets. Dorothy, here! When you're feeling down, having some sweets and taking it easy is the best. The candy Aiden used to love is back in stock. If you like, take it to him. My sister, who smiles so brightly, is reliable and shed a bright light on my darkened heart. Time passed and the season turned to the new year. I was visiting my son's house. It must have been cold, right? Come on in, please. My son's wife took my coat and guided me into the living room. I thought she was really considerate and a good person, but then something happened that nullified that impression. Thanks, Emma. By the way, where's Aiden? I couldn't find my grandson anywhere. Even though he usually stays holed up at home, he shows his face and smiles at me whenever I visit. But on this day, he's nowhere to be found. I had heard my son would be back from work in the evening, but I haven't been told anything about my grandson. Is he in his room? That's what I thought when I was about to head there. Aiden's out shopping right now, Emma shouted, as if to stop me in my tracks. I jumped in surprise, but even more shocking were her words. Shopping? Aiden is able to leave the house now? My grandson, who hadn't left the house for the past year, was taking an unexpected big step. I was so moved that I inadvertently let out a loud cry. Yes, it seems he finally found the courage. I felt a slight unease in Emma's forced smile, but at that moment, I didn't dig into it, because my son's wife was truly devoted and dependable. I had never once looked at her with a suspicious gaze. Since my son was an emergency doctor, he rarely came home, so the household matters were almost entirely left to his wife, Emma. That's why she quit her job. She wanted to dedicate herself to her family and raise her son properly. She had overcome the challenges of raising him alone with those thoughts in mind. I had no reason to suspect that Emma would do anything to her grandson. But now I live with a lifetime of regret. If only I had noticed my daughter-in-law's hidden side at that time, my grandson might not have suffered like this. I'm making your favorite steak for dinner tonight, Mary. Oh my, you didn't have to go to all that trouble. Not at all. You've always been so good to us. Please, let me do this much. Thank you. Here, this is for Aiden. The candy that Aiden used to love is back in stock. Saying that, I handed over a box of assorted candies, and she smiled at me with pleasure. I was helping Emma prepare dinner, but when I looked at the clock, it was already past 7 p.m. Speaking of which, Aiden hasn't come back yet. Isn't it getting too late for shopping? He just called me. He'll be staying at a friend's house today. A friend? He's been staying inside the house all the time, but it seems he's made an internet friend recently. He'll be staying at their house today. Something's off. If he had the courage to do that, why would he be cooped up at home? I continued to prepare dinner with those doubts in my mind. I felt something was off about my daughter-in-law's explanation. I wanted to see the truth with my own eyes. Thinking so, I slipped out of the living room while my daughter-in-law was busy preparing dinner. I quietly visited my son's room, making sure not to make any noise, only to find out that no one was there. Rather, the room was completely empty. What is this? Where's Aiden? Aiden, where are you? Something was wrong. I thought so and started walking around my son's house. It was built in an old-fashioned way, with a long corridor running through it. The view of the garden from that corridor was always breathtaking, but today something felt off about it. That garage, has it been cleaned up? This house originally belonged to my husband, and it's his family home. Now my son and his family live there, so I knew that garage had been there for a long time. But, for some reason, the garage that was dirty last year had been cleaned. It had changed as if someone had put a hand to it, and I couldn't help but wonder why. I was about to approach the garage, changing into the sandals left in the garden, when it happened. "Found you! Mary, what are you doing?" My son's wife's shouting voice rang out, as if to stop me from entering the garage. Surprised by her loud voice, I involuntarily jumped back. "You suddenly disappeared, and I've been looking all over for you." "Emma, I'm sorry. I thought I'd take a look at the garden, as it's been a while." "Oh, come on. Please let me know next time. This house is so big, it's hard to notice if anything happens." Her laugh was somehow frightening, and I took a step back, forcing a smile. "Aiden came home when he heard you were here, Grandma. He's in the kitchen now. Shall we go back?" Came home. That one sentence filled me with unease again. For my grandson, who had been staying home, a chance to play with friends should have been extremely valuable. I was happy that he was pleased to see me, but would he really come home just because of that? My suspicions grew towards my son's wife as we headed back to the living room together. But on the way, I didn't overlook it. The fact that my grandson's shoes were next to the garage. And after this, I was to find out that my grandson had been leading a truly desperate life. "Come on, the steak is ready. Let's eat." My son's wife handed me a plate and encouraged me to eat, but I couldn't find my grandson anywhere. No matter how much I looked around, I couldn't even sense his presence. Puzzled, I decided to ask, "Hey, where's Aiden? You said he came home, right?" I had been concerned about my grandson ever since I arrived, and my son's wife seemed to sigh in frustration at my questions. "Aiden's in the kitchen." "The kitchen?" "He takes his meals in the kitchen." "What?" I was genuinely shocked by what she said. I recalled my grandson's room earlier and the shoes by the garage. I hastily stood up and headed to the kitchen, where my grandson was. "Aiden?" "Grandma?" There he was, standing and eating a hamburger. I noticed the hamburger he was eating, but what surprised me even more was my grandson's drastically changed appearance. He used to love sports, and he had a good physique. But my grandson standing there had lost all his flesh, so emaciated that his collarbone and other bones were sharply protruding. His gaunt and unhealthy appearance made me let out a cry that was almost a scream. "Aiden, what happened to you? Your body?" "Grandma, please help." "What are you doing, Aiden?" The moment my grandson tried to say something, my son's wife appeared, cutting him off. My grandson, whose face looked like he might burst into tears at any moment, now stared at his mother in fear. "Mary, we have this delicious meat. Let's eat it quickly, shall we? Just ignore Aiden." Saying that, my son's wife tried to coax me away from the kitchen. I refused and stood in front of her as if shielding my grandson. "Emma, what is going on here?" "What do you mean?" My son's wife stared at me with a feigned, innocent look, trying to play dumb. Her insincere behavior irritated me and fueled my anger. "Don't play dumb, please. Why is Aiden eating in the kitchen all by himself? And just a hamburger, at that?" "Oh, this is his punishment." I involuntarily shuddered at her, as she said it with a smirk, as if it were a trivial matter. She continued speaking, laughing with a troubled look, and lowering her eyebrows while looking at my grandson, who was hiding behind me. "Today, I asked him to clean the bathroom, but he didn't do it properly. It's part of his discipline." Is there a problem with that? I felt a terror at my son's wife's stance on discipline. Just because he failed to clean once, he has to endure this? It's too strange. She must be insane. That's exactly what I felt. I wonder if my son knows how terrifying her ideas are. The moment I opened my mouth to question her, my grandson interrupted me. I'm sorry, I'm okay, really. Grandma, can you please go eat with Mom and enjoy your meal? Please?" He pleaded in a soft voice, and my grandson grabbed the back of my clothes. I could feel his hand trembling through my back, and I chose to swallow the words I was about to say. Grandma, it's normal for me to eat here, so please don't worry about it, really. Normal? What do you mean by normal? Come on, Aiden says so. Let's go over there, shall we, Mary? Saying so, my son's wife forcibly took me to the living room. If I stir things up any further, my grandson might be harmed. If that's why he intervened earlier to prevent that. I sensed a crisis for my grandson and pondered desperately for a solution. Come on, let's cheer up and eat. Today we have premium beef steak, she said, cheerfully chewing on the delicious-looking meat. But I couldn't eat at all, and I excused myself by saying I had a light dinner before coming here. After finishing the meal, I was planning to stay overnight and was guided to the bathroom. Taking the opportunity, I walked around the house again, looking for my grandson. I have to save Aiden. From the situation since I came to this house and my grandson's condition, I sensed that my son's wife was doing something terrible to him. But how to save him? I was thinking of taking my grandson and going to my sister's place, but I couldn't find him anywhere. He was not in the rooms, bathroom. Where had he disappeared to? Could it be that he's been locked in my son's wife's room? Just then, I spotted the garage in the yard. My grandson's shoes were lying there. Could it be? I quickly changed into the yard sandals and rushed to the garage entrance. Who? The garage entrance was not locked, and I was able to enter smoothly. There, I found my grandson, trying to fall asleep. Aiden? What are you doing here? What on earth happened? I rushed to my grandson, who was huddled in the corner of the garage, looking cold and frightened, wrapped in a blanket. My grandson looked up at me trembling, as if frightened by my approach. Grandma, it's okay. It happens all the time. Please don't worry about it. That's right. It's his punishment for always being a nuisance. What? Emma was suddenly standing at the entrance to the garage, smiling as she looked at my grandson and me. Mom! Mary, you really do love meddling, don't you? Even though Aiden was trying to protect you. Emma, you've been cruel to Aiden after all. Cruel? What are you talking about? I'm just teaching Aiden the same way I was raised. If you do something wrong, it's natural to be punished, right? Neglect. That word perfectly summed up the family environment, and I was almost at a loss for words. My son's wife was apparently raised in a harsh environment as a child, and what she was doing to my grandson seemed to be a part of the discipline she had received herself. But I couldn't accept that kind of parenting, and I spontaneously voiced my opinion. Punishment? This? What did Aiden do? You don't understand how I feel. I love Aiden and want him to be with me forever. But he abandoned me, trying to leave the house to go to college. It's all because he went to such a place. That's why he changed. My grandson was utterly terrified by his mother's hysterical outburst. I learned later that because she had overcome the challenges of raising a child alone, she seemed to have developed an abnormal attachment to my son. So, you've confined Aiden? You knew, didn't you? That's right, to keep Aiden from leaving me. So, I made him quit college. It was all to satisfy her own desires. I couldn't comprehend her talking about such terrifying thoughts so casually. The situation was more than just frightening. My grandson had been living in fear of that twisted love, suffering for a whole year. Thinking of his terror, I trembled with rage and couldn't help but glare at her. Since Mary knows the truth now, I can't let you go home, can I? With those words, my son's wife, wearing a sinister smile, began to slowly close the garage door. We're going to be trapped. I realized it too late, and by the time I started to move, it was already too late. After a loud metallic clang, I heard the sound of a clock. I'll think about what to do with Mary overnight. For today, you two, Aiden and you, we'll just have to sleep in the garage and reflect on things. My son's wife seemed relieved that she had locked me and my grandson in, and I could hear her walking away from the scene. In the silent garage, it was my grandson who spoke first. Why? Huh? Why did you come looking for me? If you had just left me alone. I couldn't bear to watch my grandson crying out like that, trembling with guilt and fear. Thinking from his perspective, this life had been so hard and painful for him. Overwhelmed by unbearable emotions, I gently embraced him. Don't talk nonsense, dear. Where is there an old woman who would abandon her precious grandson? Precious? Yes, dear. It's no exaggeration to say that my life was saved because you were born. Just before my grandson was born, I was struck with the grave illness of cancer. My body had dramatically withered away, and the disease had spread to various places. It was severe. Honestly, I thought it might be the end of my life. I was in such a state that I had prepared myself for it. During that time, Emma was in a dangerous situation during childbirth. For both mother and child, it was such a difficult delivery that they were issuing warnings. But my grandson was born. At the time of his birth, I expressed profound gratitude to my son's wife, and although I had been ready for the end of my life, my grandson gave me the courage and hope to live. So you see, I decided that I must protect you. It's because of your resilience which saved my life that I have been able to live this long. My grandson listened quietly to my gentle words, and then perhaps overwhelmed by a wave of both pain and joy, he began to cry quietly, embracing me in return. I really want to run away. I want to leave here and go somewhere Mom isn't. I'm scared of Mom. If I voice any opinion, she starts screaming like she's a different person. If I didn't listen to her, I'd be locked in this garage since I was little. Even if I escaped, she would file a missing person report and I'd be caught right away. There's no escape. I had no idea that my son's wife's behavior was tormenting my grandson like this. From what he told me, all his friends were taken away by my son's wife, and there was no one to help him. It seemed he had given up hope of escaping from my son's wife. Now I'm stuck with this weak body. I'm really pathetic, aren't I? I found it painful to see my grandson's forced smile. I could feel my body trembling with anger. Let's run away, Aiden. Huh? I will protect you no matter what. I will rescue you from here, so just wait. I said this and pulled out my mobile phone from my pocket, calling someone. Hello? Mary? What's going on? The person on the other end was my sister, and I explained the whole situation to her. Rather than getting angry, my sister thought of a way to help us first. First of all, make sure to keep each other warm so you don't get cold. Oliver's workplace is that place, right? With those words, my sister asked me for the address of my son's workplace. I was certain, but I wondered what she was planning to do, and was about to ask when she cut me off, anticipating my question. We need to teach her a lesson. I'll make her understand that her twisted love is wrong. Just wait, both of you. I'll come and rescue you soon. My sister told me this unilaterally, then hung up the phone, and we spent some time just like that. It was January, in the dead of winter. Since we were in the mountains, the temperature had dropped even further. The cold was so severe that even huddled together, my grandson and I couldn't bear it. Our words dwindled, and I felt like I might lose consciousness. Just as I was about to close my eyes with those thoughts, something happened. It sounded like a fire, or some sort of accident nearby. There was a loud noise of ambulances, fire trucks, and police cars. The sound brought me back to my senses, but something about it seemed off. It was very close, and it sounded as if they had stopped right in front of our house, perhaps. Just as I thought that, I heard the scream of my son's wife. Hey, you guys! What's going on? Over here! Quickly! Break the garage lock! Incredibly, I even began to hear my son's voice from outside. Help had arrived. With that thought, I stood up and began pounding on the garage with all my strength. I'm here! Someone! Someone please help! Save Aiden! Save my grandson! Following my cry, my grandson also began to raise his voice, calling for help. We're opening it now! Please stand back! Because the paramedics shouted that, my grandson and I moved away from the entrance. The sound of the lock being broken with machinery echoed, and the moment it was destroyed, the entrance burst open with force. Are both of you okay? Dad? My son, his face a mix of panic and anxiety, appeared and hugged his son as if he were jumping on him. Seeing his father's face, my grandson seemed relieved and embraced his father, crying. Hey, what are you doing? You think this is allowed? Doing something like this without permission? Emma, unable to comprehend the situation, screamed and ranted, claiming their actions were unreasonable, but not a single adult seemed intimidated by her. Everyone glared at her, and then my sister appeared, confronting my son's wife. Don't talk nonsense! Do you even realize what you've done? My sister yelled at my son's wife in a voice louder than I'd ever heard before. We were all taken aback by her voice, but the one who was even more startled was my son's wife. You were about to do something irreversible! Don't you understand how dangerous that was? My sister yelled at my son's wife, her anger like that of a real mother, but my son's wife raised her voice to confront her. In the first place, if Mary hadn't meddled, none of this would have happened. It's not my fault, it's all Mary's fault. I'm not in the wrong. Those words of my son's wife screaming that she was not at fault made me furious, and I lost my temper. If I hadn't noticed this today, you would have continued to believe Aiden was yours, and would have kept taking away his freedom. But that's because Aiden doesn't understand my feelings. Don't force your selfish thoughts on a child. I rebuked my son's wife, who was still trying to resist, scolding her so sharply that I left no room for rebuttal. You unilaterally demand love in return, and don't even try to listen to the child's opinions. You have no right to call yourself a parent. What did you say? Interrupting Emma's attempt to argue, a police officer stepped in front of her. Emma, you are being detained on suspicion of kidnapping. What? Hey, wait a minute. Hold on. If you resist, the charges will become more serious. At the police officer's words, a breathless Emma quieted down and was then taken away. Afterward, my grandson and I went to the hospital for an examination. He had been locked in a freezing garage. There were no visible abnormalities. He underwent a thorough examination, but nothing unusual was found. However, he was hospitalized to monitor his condition for the day. Dorothy, thank you for coming to help. You should thank Oliver. Thanks to him quickly arranging everything, we were able to rescue him. I'm really sorry. It's my fault for not looking after the house properly. Oliver, that's not true. You were working hard to protect our home. But maybe this happened because I left everything to Emma, using work as an excuse. I'm also to blame. I spoke gently to my son, who felt responsible. Then, from now on, you must protect Aiden. Surely Emma will come to take Aiden back. Yeah, I think so too. We have to make sure that he never falls into her hands again. That's true, but what should we do? I have an idea. When I proposed this to my son and sister, they both agreed. Time passed and the day came when Emma was released. As we were prepared for her to contact us, sure enough, Oliver's mobile phone rang. Wait, what's going on here? The first thing out of her mouth was neither an apology nor a complaint, but a voice almost like a shout. Both my sister and I, who were listening to the call, sighed at her expected reaction. What's the matter? The house! It's gone, isn't it? Yeah, it's gone. We don't need a house to live with you anymore. What? What do you mean? Explain yourself! Just being released and faced with an incomprehensible situation, she was speaking with a voice filled with anger and desperation. In fact, after that, we all, including my grandson, had discussed it and sold the house, leaving it a vacant lot. Since I had originally been the owner of the house, selling it was easy. My son and grandson were now living on entirely different land, and after this phone call, the mobile phone was to be disconnected, and arrangements were made to talk to Emma through a lawyer. There's no way we can go on with you, and Aiden has finally settled down. Don't try to interfere with our family anymore. What are you talking about? Aiden is my precious son. Stop it. The grandson, who had been listening to the call, quietly spoke up at her shouting. Aiden? Where are you? Mom will come and get you. Just wait. I'll come and take you back right away. You're creepy. In response to Emma's words, the grandson spoke out in an angry tone. Emma, surprised at his words, showed a look of confusion. Aiden? What on earth are you saying? I've put up with it for so long. I'm finally living freely with Dad and the others, so don't get in our way. I never want to see your face again. The grandson, who had said that, was excited, catching his breath with his shoulders. I placed my hand on his shoulder and gently soothed him by patting it several times. We are getting a divorce. Don't ever show yourself in front of us again. My son, who had said this, hung up the phone unilaterally and immediately set his phone to reject calls from Emma's number. We also made sure that no contact could reach the grandson's mobile phone, leaving the rest to the lawyer. After that, the divorce from Emma was successfully finalized. Thanks to a restraining order, the grandson is enjoying peaceful days. Emma is said to be attending therapy, unable to let go of her love for her son. She's not working and lives on benefits from the government, or so I heard through the grapevine. Since then, my grandson has stopped shutting himself in the house and is now studying hard with the ambition to attend medical school. I want to become someone who can help others too. Inspired by the father and rescue team that saved him, he's been saying this and striving every day. My sister and I still run the candy store, playing with little children every day. For our grandchildren who have regained a peaceful life, and for the children yet to be born who we hope to welcome into our lives, we cannot give up on living just yet.